Every year in the Premier League, 20 teams compete for the title, and at the end, Man City usually come out on top. This season is no different, with Pep Guardiola's Manchester City favored to win the league once again. Even back in 2016-17, when Pep first took charge and City had the likes of Claudio Bravo in goal, Bacary Sagna, and Gael Clichy trying their best as inverted fullbacks, they were still the bookmakers' pick to win it all. Despite finishing 15 points behind Chelsea that season, the odds have consistently favored City, and for good reason. In 6 of Pep's 8 seasons at the helm, City have claimed the Premier League crown, proving the bookies right more often than not. If anything, the dominance of Guardiola's City has been somewhat undervalued by the odds. Consider this. Manchester City have won the league 75% of the time under Guardiola, yet their preseason odds have never truly reflected just how likely they are to come out on top. If you'd bet on City to win the league before each of the past 8 seasons, you'd have made a tidy profit by now. With that in mind, current odds give Manchester City a 47.6% chance, plus 110, of winning the Premier League this season. So, while City are still the individual favorites to win it all, the field is actually favored over them. But why? And why might Arsenal actually be the real favorites this season? Let's get into it. Manchester City were average last season, not great. You can pick any stat you like, but let's start with the basics. Points and goal differential. Last season, City racked up 91 points and a plus 58 goal differential. Numbers that, believe it or not, rank as the 5th and 4th worst of the Guardiola era. Now, it's ridiculous to call that average. Over the 30-plus year history of the Premier League, the champions have averaged around 87 points and a plus 50 goal differential. So even in a down year, City were still significantly better than your typical Premier League champion. But here's the thing, they didn't win 4 league titles in a row and 6 out of 7 by merely being better than average each season. As the chart shows, their points and goals have been pretty consistent over the last 2 league seasons. If City had played at this exact level every year over the past 7 seasons, they'd have ended up with just 4 league titles, not the 6 they've actually secured. To dominate the league like City have, you need a few untouchable campaigns in the mix. But here's the kicker. If City put up these exact same numbers again this season, they're beatable. Manchester City is likely to regress in 2024-25. If we take a look at every City player who logged at least 1,000 league minutes last season, there's reason to expect some regression from more than half of them. Take Rodri, arguably the best player in the Premier League. He led City in minutes last season, but he's edging closer to the end of his peak years, and City still haven't figured out how to operate at an elite level without him on the pitch. Then there's Phil Foden, who was second in minutes for City last season and named Premier League Player of the Year. He outperformed his expected goals by an almost unbelievable 8.7 goals, the biggest overachievement in the league by far. Sure, he's likely a top-tier finisher, but no one is that good. Expect his goal tally to dip next season unless he's taking even more high-quality shots. Ederson, City's 3rd most used player, is reportedly open to a move to the Saudi League. Julian Alvarez, their 4th most used, has already left for Atletico Madrid. Meanwhile, Kyle Walker and Bernardo Silva, the 5th and 6th most used players, will be 34 and 30 respectively when the season starts. Add to that Manuel Akanji, 29, Nathan Ake, 29, Mateo Kovacic, 30, Kevin De Bruyne, 33, and John Stones, 30. All of whom will either be on the verge of or already past their peak years when the season kicks off. Now, if it were just 1 or 2 key players hitting the wrong side of 30, it wouldn't be much of a concern. Those players might not decline at all, and even if they do, their teammates could step up, and the team could adjust their roles to keep things ticking along smoothly. But when you have this many players nearing or in their 30s, you run the risk of multiple key figures declining at the same time, leading to a sudden and perhaps unexpected drop in performance. Just ask Liverpool in 2022-23. At the very least, Manchester City's roster looks more fragile than it has in a long time. Manchester City have 2 teams to fend off, Liverpool and Arsenal. If it were just Manchester City and Arsenal battling for the title, City would be favored to win the league more than 50% of the time. If it were just City and Liverpool, that percentage would be even higher. But because it's City, Arsenal, and Liverpool all in the mix, the majority of the championship odds actually lean toward the field rather than the 4-time defending champions. During their first 5 league titles under Guardiola, City finished a whopping 19.6 points ahead of the 3rd-place team on average. Last season, Liverpool were 9 points behind City, yet still 14 points clear of 4th-place Aston Villa. The gap between 1st and 3rd was smaller than the gap between 3rd and 4th. Manchester City weren't the best team last year, despite winning the title. While expected goals is the most reliable single stat for predicting future team performance, research revealed that a blend of expected goals and actual goals is even more predictive. Studies discovered that a mix of 70% expected goals and 30% goals offered the best insight into how teams would perform in the future. With that in mind, here's how everyone stacks up based on an adjusted per-game goal differential, which combines 70% of last season's expected goals differential and 30% of their actual goal differential. You'll notice Arsenal at the top, marking the first time in the Guardiola era, even including his transitional first season, that City haven't led the league in this key metric. When Liverpool won the league, they were still well behind City in adjusted goal differential. Even in the seasons when they pushed City to the wire with 90-plus points and deep Champions League runs, their numbers were outstanding, but still not quite at City's level. In other words, if you were predicting this season purely based on last season's underlying performance, Arsenal would be the slight favorites to win it all. Arsenal and Liverpool will get better. The biggest red flag for Arsenal this season? Health. Last season, the Gunners had it in spades. Their key players were almost always on the pitch. William Saliba, 100% of Premier League minutes. Declan Rice, 94.3%. Martin Odegaard, 90.4%. Gabriel, 89%. Ben White, 87.4%. Bukayo Saka, 85.4%. These 6 players are essentially irreplaceable in Arsenal's current squad, and Mikel Arteta didn't have to worry much about how to cope without them. Contrast that with Manchester City, who lost Kevin De Bruyne on the opening day and had to manage with him playing less than 50% of the available minutes. Meanwhile, Liverpool's roster was decimated, with nearly everyone except Virgil van Dijk missing significant time. If you're looking for a reason to doubt Arsenal, this is it, not because of some psychological hurdle, but because of the uncertainty surrounding injuries. That said, the biggest predictor of future injury is past injury, and perhaps these players are just the type who can consistently shoulder heavy minutes. While injury risk might be murky, there's one clear factor in Arsenal's favor: the age of their squad. Weighted by minutes played, Arsenal's average player age last season was 25, the third youngest in the league. This means that aside from 32-year-old Jorginho and 30-year-old Leandro Trossard, there's almost no one on the roster expected to decline due to age. Jorginho played around 900 minutes last season, and while Trossard contributed 12 goals, he was primarily used as a substitute. Instead, Arsenal boasts a core of players in their prime years, 24 to 28, including Rice, Odegaard, Gabriel, and White, all squarely in this range, as is Kai Havertz. Alexander Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus are slightly older but still in their prime, and David Raya, turning 29 soon, is in his prime as a goalkeeper. These players are at the peak ages when professional footballers typically perform their best. But Arsenal also has young stars who are poised to get even better. Bukayo Saka won't turn 23 until September, William Saliba hits 24 in March, and Gabriel Martinelli will be 23 for the entire season. The next step in Saka's development is becoming a truly elite goal scorer and creator. Would anyone be surprised if this is the season it finally happens? Saliba is already among the world's best center-backs, but one area for improvement is his aerial ability. Despite his size, he doesn't contest many headers and has a relatively low success rate. Given his physicality, there's no reason he couldn't dominate in the air. This could be the season he makes that leap. Perhaps the most significant area for individual improvement, and the one I'm most willing to bet on, lies with Martinelli. 2 years ago, he was just as promising as Saka, if not more so. In the season before last, he notched 15 non-penalty goals and 5 assists. But in 2023-24, Martinelli's output dipped to just 6 goals and 4 assists. Had he contributed just a couple more goals or assists, Arsenal might have been entering this season as defending champions. It was the worst season of his career, at the worst possible time. Yet, his underlying performance was nearly identical to the previous season. 0.59 expected goals plus expected assists in 22-23 compared to 0.58 last season. This suggests that Martinelli is the type of player who could experience a breakout season. We should expect his goals and assists to better reflect his underlying numbers this season, and at his age, those numbers could improve significantly. Liverpool also has players poised for a breakout season. Darwin Núñez, Dominic Szoboszlai, Harvey Elliott, Connor Bradley, and Ryan Gravenberch. Plus, it's hard to imagine them being as injury-riddled as they were last season. Fewer injuries combined with Darwin and Szoboszlai emerging as true stars could make Liverpool a title contender, even without Jurgen Klopp at the helm. On top of potential external improvements, Arsenal should have 23-year-old Jurrien Timber, who missed nearly all of last season, ready for the opener. They've also added 22-year-old Riccardo Calafiori from Bologna, providing young, versatile defensive options that could address last season's left-back issues. Additionally, they're rumored to be pursuing another midfielder, which would reduce the reliance on an aging Jorginho or an out-of-position Havertz. Liverpool hasn't made any signings yet, but their only real gap is in defensive midfield. Reports suggest they attempted to sign 25-year-old Martín Zubimendi from Real Sociedad for the role. While there's no guarantee Zubimendi or any other target would succeed, acquiring someone for this position represents an immediate path to improvement under new manager Arne Slot. Manchester City, of course, have more resources than either Arsenal or Liverpool, but so far they've only brought in Savio from Girona and lost Julian Alvarez to Atletico Madrid, a player exchange that's, at best, a net neutral for the squad. Given Pep Guardiola's track record and the presence of Erling Haaland, this could all look foolish by May. After all, betting against City has looked foolish in all but one of the past 7 seasons. City still deserves to be favorites, but their dominance has waned just enough, and their rivals have enough paths to improvement. So, if I have to choose between Manchester City and the combined forces of Arsenal and Liverpool, I'm siding with the latter.